Usually very prompt.
You are. So, Margaret, I posted a picture of the orange, whatever it is, on your roof today because it looked just like the gates, the Cristo gates.
Oh,
And
that's so funny.
I put that up on Instagram.
You are too, Vivian, you always find beauty in everything.
Aw. Did you get your calendar?
I don't know if I got my calendar. I have to pick one up for this year. I don't think I
Right.
have one. I still have
The
last
place that
year's.
has them is, I can drop it off. Tazo doesn't have them anymore, but the liquor store does on Broadway and
Okay.
157th.
Well, I'm happy to say
Or
I'm
I
not a
can-
frequent visitor of the liquor store, but
All right. Well, I could meet you and hand you one.
gotcha. I would love one.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good. It would be good to see you. It's nice to see everyone in this surreal world
I know.
we live in. There is Kate. I'm sure everyone will get to meet Kate Regev, who's from Buyer Blinderbell.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi.
Is it just us?
No, we are supposed to have 2 people from city planning, as you can see on the agenda. And I'm just reaching out to them to make sure they got their link.
Right.
And a cast of millions in the audience, right?
So do they all appear via, like, can we see everybody?
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're not on. They've not logged in as participants.
Okay.
You don't see the audience, though, Margaret, if that's what you're wondering.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
No.
Right. No, we are the panelists because we're committee members and such.
I see. So are they on as we talk?
They absolutely are. And I think they can see us as well.
Okay. So I should be careful when I.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Good to keep me
Right.
honest.
Yeah, well, that's why I pointed out only a few minutes ago that it was 7:01, so we were probably live and should be mindful of the chatter.
Right. And we're being recorded. Right.
Yeah, that too.
Mhm.
I just sent an email to the folks at City Planning. But, we do have a quorum. We have a committee of 6, and there are 4 of us present. So although the agenda was set up for the introduction of our new city planning liaison to be first, since we have our speakers from the Hispanic Society with us and we do not have our speakers from city planning, let me call the meeting to order at 7:05. I would like to welcome everyone. I'm Wayne Benjamin and I chair land use for Manhattan Community Board 12. I'd like to have my fellow committee members introduce themselves and then we shall begin. So Viv?
I'm Vivian Ducat. I'm a public member of land use for the last, 15 years. It's adding up.
Something like that. Tanya? Is muted.
Hi, I'm Tanya, board member, and with community board 12.
Jim?
I'm Jim Berlin. I've been on the community board, I think, 42 years. Now, your institution is indeed far older, so.
So, welcome to the second meeting of the Land Use Committee for 2022. Margaret, great to see you again. And we're very interested in hearing what the Hispanic Society has to update us on with respect to accessibility and signage and roof bulkheads and equipment. So the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure. So my name is Margaret Connors-Aquaid. I'm the Deputy Director of the Hispanic Society. I've been at the Hispanic Society now for 28 years, and I've had the privilege of presenting and attending many of the meetings at Community Board 12 and particularly the Land Use Committee. It has been a while since I presented, but I'm delighted to return to today with one of our architects, and I think there are others who are in the audience, who are watching us this evening. But I do want to introduce you to Kate Regev, who is from Buyer Blender Bell. And I will turn it over to her in a minute, but before I do, I have a few comments. And Kate, can we share the screen? Wayne?
Yes,
Okay.
tell me when so Margaret, I'm sharing, just let me know. Can
We can
everyone
see it. We can see it.
Okay. All right, and let me get into presentation mode, and there we go.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a lot to cover this evening, but I just wanted to tell you that our focus tonight is to present our current plans for the Landmark Preservation Commission. And so, Kate, if you could go to the next slide. As many of you know, the Hispanic Society is located on Audubon Terrace, which is designated as a New York City landmark, and thus anything on the exterior of the building must be approved. Any kind of changes must be approved by landmarks. And so we are coming to you this evening to present our plans in kind of advance of presenting to landmarks. And so that's sort of why we're here. But I just thought I would mention a few other things that are happening and what our objectives are. So as many of you, sorry, Kate, if you could just go back one. So I just wanted, this is the Audubon Terrace. Well, this is the historic district. And as you can see, Audubon, there's the Audubon Park Historic District. And the Hispanic Society is located on Audubon Terrace, which is on both the south side on 155th and Broadway, and we'll get in a moment, but it also runs into the terrace, and then we also occupy the center building on the north side of Audubon Terrace. So just to orient everybody, okay, now you can go to the next slide. And so in previous meetings, I have presented kind of early stages of our master plan, which we kind of revisited with a new design team in 2018, completed in 2019. And I'm really excited to be kind of working on the execution of some of these plans. We are moving in phases, but because of course we have a very ambitious project to really address all of our buildings, the entire campus of the Hispanic Society. And you can see in this slide, kind of outlined, this lovely red dotted line is the campus that belonging to the Hispanic Society. So again, we're on Broadway and 155th Street, and on the north side is 156th Street. So it kind of gives you, kind of orient us all. So I can't remember, I think it's the next slide, Kate. Okay, and this is kind of a bird's eye view. There are two main objectives here that we're trying to achieve. One is having universal accessibility to our buildings, and also to reopen. We have been closed, since we redid, replaced the roof of the main building, we restored the facades. We had hoped to be earlier in the stage of our renovation of the East Building, but we're getting to it. And so what we did do last summer, is we did kind of a temporary renovation of the ground floor of the East Building so we could do exhibitions in that space. And I hope if you haven't been to one of our recent exhibitions, we have a new one opening. It's called Nuestra Casa. It's opening just in a couple weeks on April 26th. It's highlights from the Hispanic Society collection. And we'll be continuing to work on temporary exhibitions, mostly of our collection. But of course, that exhibition space is located in the East Building, and we will, when we renovate that building, we will have to close that building. So what we would like to do is reopen the main court and the Sorolla Gallery, and allowing it to be fully accessible. So what we're really looking to show you today, and Kate's going to show it to you, is an accessible route. Some aspects are temporary until we can do the full renovation of the terrace, but we really are eager to open up the Sorolla Gallery and the main court and allow everybody to enter into that building. Let's see, what else do we have, Kate? if you can go to the next slide. So this is, again, this is the terrace. Now, we just did a little bit of history for those of you who have not been to the Hispanic Society. The Hispanic Society was built, the first building, the main building you see in yellow, was built in, started in 1904, finished in 1906, opened in 1908. And Huntington, our founder, kind of had this idea of a cultural campus, bring in other cultural institutions. He also was building the collection, as well as he's expanding the building and finding space to put everything. So we actually purchased the building on the corner. It's called, identified as East Building on 155th and Broadway. That is the former Museum of the American Indian building, and we purchased that building in 1996 to expand our space. It also gives us direct access to Broadway. Let's see, what am I missing? I think it's the next slide. But there are a series of terraces, which, as lovely as they are, they're not accessible. And so we are really eager to open them up and allow everyone to enjoy them. So Kate is going to show you in a moment, but really that's the idea. The other thing project that we're looking to address is the actual renovation of the East Building. We're starting with, we are working in phases. So we're going to address the envelope like we've always done with our projects. We're replacing the roof. You can see, this is an old photograph from 1919 where you can see the original skylight there, which was covered up by the previous tenants of that building. We're looking to bring that skylight back and have really a glorious conservation studio on the 4th floor of the East Building, and with a new copper roof. As many of you know, there's no air conditioning in these buildings. So we are looking to fully air condition the spaces, really in keeping with museum standards. And so that equipment has to go somewhere. So Kate is going to present to you the plan to put, we have to put the equipment somewhere. So it is going to be located on the flat roof of the East Building, which she will show you. Another aspect of that plan is to put in a new freight elevator. It will be sort of a service. It will be both a larger elevator for artwork, and it also will be a passenger elevator and will be ADA accessible. So there will be a second elevator to the one that we have now. But that's kind of it in a nutshell for my presentation. Really, I just want to emphasize that the purpose of this is to open our buildings. We're really looking to be universally accessible. And I'm, excited to have a discussion with you and present our plans, both temporary and long-term. So I think there's one more slide, Kate. Yeah, this is a little bit of history of our buildings from 1919, and there's 1910. You can kind of see the wonderful buildings. We're not only restoring, but making them accessible.
Great, thank you, Margaret.
No, my pleasure. So now I turn you over to Kate, who really has done an amazing job in looking at alternatives for accessibility, and also where do we put all this equipment that we need. So thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Margaret. So as Margaret mentioned, my name is Kate Regev. I'm an architect and historian and project manager at Beyer Blinder Bell. And so I'm going to walk you through kind of three aspects or three kind of different components to what we are looking to do over the coming couple of years. I also just want to add, I'm sorry, I have my 7-year-old daughter right next to me, trying to keep her occupied. If you hear some squealing, I might need to get up for just a second. So let's jump into accessibility issues. Margaret explained a little bit, and we showed some photos of some of the different issues that we've had at the Hispanic Society with the different level changes. She mentioned that the campus is kind of formed around these terraces that are at different levels. And you can see once you come in at the middle of the street along Broadway, immediately you go down a flight of steps. Then in order to make your way to the main building, you need to go up another flight. And then in order to finally enter into the main building, you need to go up yet another flight of steps. So there's a lot of level changes. And at the moment, the only part that is accessible is this first flight of steps. And that's because there's currently a temporary ramp located here. And now, while that is temporary and there's no work proposed as part of this, I think it helps lay the groundwork for how we want to kind of continue that means of accessibility all the way through the campus until you get to the main building. So a couple of photos for those of you who aren't familiar with the Hispanic Society and Audubon Terrace as a campus. This is if you're standing kind of at the entryway on Broadway looking west. And so this is that temporary ramp on your left. And then that second flight of stairs that you go up is kind of in the distance. This is a closer view out of those stairs where you move from what we call Broadway Terrace, this lower terrace, up to the upper terrace here. And then this final photo at the end is if you're standing kind of at the top of these stairs here, you're finally at the top of the upper terrace and you're looking, and on the left, you have the entrance to the main building where we have these steps here. So in section, if we're looking, we have Broadway over here. There's that temporary ramp here, no work proposed. And then in order to move up these existing stairs, we're proposing what's called a incline platform lift. And I'll show you a little bit more detail about that. And then finally, to get up to this last section here, to get into the main building, we're proposing building out a platform, a new set of temporary stairs, and then a vertical lift. Now, I'm saying all of this is temporary because it's not like we are anticipating it will be there for just a month or two. We really are thinking temporary in terms of kind of a 5 to 10 year timeline. So we really want this space to kind of continue to be accessible as the Hispanic Society continues work on its master plan and continues kind of opening buildings over the next several years. So looking first at this this flight of stairs that go from the Broadway terrace to the upper terrace, a couple of notes about the existing conditions. The steps themselves are granite, solid granite, and then they're surrounded on either side by a limestone balustrade. And then at the top, we have a wrought iron fence and gate. This gate is actually not original. We have some historic photos that pinpoint its installation to the 1950s. And what we are proposing to do is to install a platform lift that will take you from the bottom of the stairs up and then would open one of these wrought iron metal panels. The current configuration of the fence is that there's two kind of swinging gates located in the center, and then on either end here are fixed panels. And so our proposal modifies one of the fixed panels so that it becomes almost like a swinging door that would manually open by whoever is also opening these gates when the museum is open, so that someone could roll onto a lift down here. The lift, basically this is, I'm sorry. Sorry. So that you roll onto the lift at the bottom, the lift moves you up the stairs, and then at the top, you are able to roll off and the panel of the gate is held open. And I should say the call button is here at the bottom, and then there's a similar kind of freestanding call button at the top. And so this is the existing condition. And then this is how we propose it would be. So you can see the lift is kind of, when it's not being used, is tucked kind of off to the left there. And actually when it's not in use, that platform is in fact kind of flipped up like this vertically. And so a little bit more detail, the path of travel is in the bottom left here. If you kind of follow this red or orange path so that you roll onto the lift, and then you are kind of swung up and around and you are dropped off at the top. And then the lift itself is supported on every other step by kind of these posts that go down onto the granite step, and then kind of two horizontal rails. And then this is just, kind of demonstrating that you can see in 1952 that original gate, that gate was not there, so we know it's not original. And then in 1958, we do see it in place. So the modifications to that non-original grille, we can talk a little bit more about the details of those. But in short, what we're anticipating doing is leaving kind of this top panel so that there's kind of a continuity that remains at this location. And then this fixed panel, part of it already is kind of a separate panel. We do anticipate needing to add a horizontal member at the top and then another vertical member on this left side so that it can transform into its own individually swinging gate. Then from the top of this, where this lift would drop you off is kind of what you see here on the left. And then you're at the top, sorry. Then you're at this what we call the upper terrace, and you are ready to move forward towards the main entry. But again, as we've mentioned earlier, the main entry itself has a flight of stairs that you need to go up in order to get inside. And so similar to the other steps, they're granite steps. They have a non-original wrought iron handrail, and then they lead you to the bronze doors here. One issue that we have here is that there's virtually no stair landing at the top when you reach the top of the stairs. So, so in order to make this ADA accessible, we are proposing to essentially create our own platform. So extend out a new metal platform, and then also have a new set of kind of temporary stairs that take you from the level of the upper terrace up to the platform, which is at the same height as as you enter the building. And then while on the other stair, we have an inclined platform lift. On this, we have just a vertical lift. The rise here is shorter. It's about 5 foot height difference. So this kind of vertical lift is actually pretty convenient for that. And so looking at that in elevation, that means that we would, an able-bodied person would come here from the left, go up these stairs and go directly into the building. Someone could also come around the front of this kind of extended platform and then enter the lift, come up and then be dropped off at the platform. And so what we would plan on cladding this kind of underside of the platform would be with painted metal aluminum panels. And we are trying to pick up some of the colors and finishes that we see elsewhere in the building. There are some bronze doors here. The windows are also bronze. And so we want to continue that materiality here. And so we would paint the whole thing, kind of the panels and then the handrails and guardrail as well. All of that would be a dark powder coated painted aluminum. A little bit of details about some of the handrails. They also would all be ADA compliant. And one quick note about one section of the railing actually would be removable so that the Hispanic Society can also use this as a means to transport art into the main building. And then kind of in sum, this is what on the left is what we're looking at for the that incline platform lift from the Broadway terrace to the upper terrace. And we think that would be black. And it would have these freestanding call stations that I mentioned earlier, whereas the vertical lift would be a dark bronze powder coated aluminum, and there would be a wall mounted call station right next to where you would enter. So that's kind of addressing accessibility on the terrace. We also have a project for where we're looking at trying to make the east building that Margaret has been had talked about earlier. We're trying to make that kind of no longer a storage space, primarily. Sorry. So as Margaret mentioned earlier, the east building is this building here on the left, and I'm at the southeast corner of the campus. Originally, it was the Museum of the American Indian, and the Museum of the American Indian left the building in the 60s, and in the 90s, as Margaret mentioned, is when the Hispanic Society purchased it. At the time of its construction, though, it was designed to look more kind of like a twin to what is now Bariqua College to the north on the other side of the terrace. And so its rooftop was outfitted with a skylight. You can see here, there was also an elevator bulkhead. And then just behind the elevator bulkhead is a flat roof. So this is a photo looking south at that roof. You can see here at the top, there is where used to be located the skylight, which has since been closed off. And then you see on the right is this flat roof with some mechanical equipment, and then the existing elevator bulkhead. You can see in the image in the bottom left, the entire roofscape has been coated in this green kind of copper patina color, including the elevator bulkhead, which is stucco, and we do not believe that that was the original color. But what you will see here is really kind of a lack of mechanical equipment. As Margaret mentioned, the buildings are not air conditioned, and since most of this building has been used either as storage, as some workspaces, and most recently a pop-up gallery, there really is not much in the way of mechanical equipment or air conditioning in this building. And so in order to kind of bring the building back online, we are proposing to put new mechanical equipment on this roof that would primarily serve what will be a conservation studio for the entire museum on the 4th floor of this building. So what you see here are two mechanical equipments. There's a tall fan in the bottom left side in red. And then in kind of in the middle of the flat roof is another fan exhaust. And so what we are proposing to do, you'll see in red, is new mechanical equipment for the primarily for the 4th floor, with a few pieces that would serve the entire building. Then in orange, you see a new elevator bulkhead. As Margaret mentioned, there is an existing elevator for the building, but it is sized for a passenger. It is not sized for someone in a wheelchair, and it also is too small for artwork. So the building really, and also I should mention that elevator is original to 1919. So the building really needs kind of an appropriately sized and accessible elevator. And then to accommodate that, there's kind of a low roof just south of it. That's also part of a new bulkhead. So looking kind of axonometrically at this building, or kind of a bird's eye type of view, you can see these two existing pieces of equipment. And the one on the south is really quite visible. It's really high up, it's quite large. And we are proposing to remove both of these. And so this is our proposed view. There is a lot of mechanical equipment, as I mentioned, but this is because there's virtually no cooling of any kind in the building at the moment. And so to go back just briefly to the elevator bulkhead and some of the materials, we are going to keep the existing elevator bulkhead. We will repaint it something more similar to its original color, which likely matched the existing limestone facade. And so we would continue that materiality and kind of detailing for the new elevator bulkhead, would match it in height, and then would have also a matching copper cornice around the entire bulkhead as well. Both would, as I mentioned, would be painted stucco, and that stucco color would match the limestone. Looking in section, so you can see at the top the existing mechanical equipment, and how visible the top the existing mechanical fan is at the south side. And while we do have more mechanical equipment that we're proposing to put up there, it really is, it's primarily lower. The higher elements are placed in the middle of the roof so that they're less visible from the public way. And then the elevator bulkhead really closely mimics the existing one in detailing the material. We also are located on the north side of Trinity Cemetery, which has a lot of greenery and a slope, which means that it's really, you cannot see a lot of this equipment from far away. And so we will go through some sightline studies in just a second, looking at various vantage points from around the block. And just quickly to look at some elevations. So on the top, we have the existing elevation of north elevation of the building that faces into the terrace. On the south is proposed. And then this is the south elevation. So kind of the elevation along 155th Street at the top is existing, and on the south side is, on the bottom is proposed. And so now I'm going to walk you through a couple of different photos and kind of sightline studies. So what you'll consistently see on the leftmost image is going to be the existing condition. In the middle is going to be the condition of a mock-up that we completed recently. And then on the right is kind of our rendering of what it would ultimately look like. So this is if you are standing within the terrace, so not technically within the public way, but still kind of within the terrace. Kind of if you are all the way kind of on the west side of Audubon Terrace, looking back at the east building. And so this kind of in the center is the existing elevator bulkhead. In the center, you can see in orange our proposed elevator mock-up. And then just kind of to the right of it, very, very low, is the mock-up for our mechanical equipment. And then on the right is our kind of photo montage with the materials that we would propose. So that elevator bulkhead, again, it looks, it's stucco, but it is the color of limestone, and it matches the existing elevator bulkhead. This would be the view if you are still within Audubon Terrace, but you are a little bit further to the west. You can see on the left, we have that existing elevator bulkhead. In the middle, we have the mock-up in orange, where you can see the elevator, the new elevator bulkhead, and then a little slice of the new mechanical equipment. And then on the right, finally, you can see what we proposed that it would look like. The mechanical equipment would be kind of a gray tone, but really for the most part, it's really quite hard to see. It's really low. This would be if you are standing at Broadway and the corner of 156th Street, kind of catty corner from the Hispanic Society. And so again, on the left, the existing condition. In the middle, what you can see that little bit in orange in the middle is the mechanical equipment mock-up. And then on the right would be what you would see from a distance, kind of the photo montage. Here you actually, from this view, you cannot see the proposed elevator bulkhead. This is if you are standing kind of in front of Bariqua College on Broadway. On the left, we have the existing elevator bulkhead. And on the right, you see just a little sliver to the right of the existing elevator bulkhead is what you would see of the proposed one. And then on the right, you can see our kind of rendered view of that superimposed on the existing photo. This is then moving kind of further south. So if you're standing on the southeast corner of Broadway and 155th Street, you can see very, very clearly from a distance that existing mechanical equipment. And then from this view, actually, you do not see the new elevator bulkhead or any of the mechanical equipment that we're proposing. So that's why you actually don't see that here. Neither the mock-ups or the bulkheads would be visible from this location. Moving slightly further south, so now you're kind of mid-block on Broadway between 154th and 155th. You're far enough away where, in the summertime, actually, the trees really block the majority of this, but in the wintertime, you see a little sliver of the mechanical equipment. That's this tiny dot in orange. And as I mentioned, the mechanical equipment will be a gray metal finish. If you're standing then on the opposite side of the street, so you're on the west side between 154th and 155th, you have the cemetery on your left. And through some of the trees, you are able to see ever so slightly this bit of orange for the mock-ups. And then on the right, you do see a sliver of the new elevator bulkhead behind that tree, and then a little bit of the mechanical equipment to the left of the tree. Moving slightly closer, you do see again a little bit of the mechanical equipment and a sliver of the new elevator bulkhead. But I should note that in these locations, what's really dominant is the existing elevator, the existing mechanical equipment. It's this kind of big chunky thing that you see in the left image. Then moving closer to the building, because of the elevation of the building, you actually, as you get closer, see less and less of the mechanical equipment. Oops, I'm sorry. And so, as we get closer, we are seeing less and less of that mock-up until finally you get to our last sightline study where you're further down the block and you do not see the mock-up or the equipment, the mock-ups for the bulkhead or for the elevator. Because at this point, you're actually below, you're kind of going downhill and looking up, so you don't see it. And then finally, we, as part of kind of this reopening and welcoming people back into the buildings and onto the terrace, we're looking at proposing some exterior signage. At the moment, there really is very limited signage to the building. There's some existing banners. There's some banners that are kind of attached to the fence on Broadway. And so we would like to do something more permanent that also has flexibility for changing out the banners for when new exhibitions are open. So on the south facade, we're proposing a single banner in this last bay. On the north elevation, we're proposing kind of a symmetrical arrangement that emphasizes or kind of plays with the building's existing symmetry. So 3 banners that are centered over the entry. And then the last, and then on the east elevation, we are proposing a single banner in the southmost corner. And then finally on the fence itself, which I should note was installed in 2006, so it's not original and it's not historic. We are proposing to attach some kind of 3-dimensional signage. So that particular signage would, as I mentioned, it would attach to the existing fence. It would be kind of a feature that would really be visible and ready to be viewed from the public walking by. So this is very kind of pedestrian oriented. And this is on the left, you see kind of the existing condition of what I'm talking about in terms of the signage that's on the fence and kind of advertising the building right now. And on the right is our proposed view of what those kind of 3-dimensional letters would look like. In terms of how we would attach that, we took some inspiration from the Cooper Hewitt and how they have attached their signage to their landmark fence. And so they have done so by, rather than kind of drilling into their fence, they have kind of bracketed onto it. So you really are touching that existing fence in the most minimal way possible. For the banners, we are looking at a system that's similar to several other major museums in the city. It's almost like a rigging system that attaches at the bottom and the top of in between these bays. And then this fabric banner is kind of like rigged up like a sail. And so this is what this would look like from the southeast corner. So you can see that kind of that corner becomes really prominent. And then we think of it almost as this corner is more geared towards passing traffic. And then the signage that's attached to the fence is really for the pedestrian. And then looking at this view as well, this is what we are proposing on this facade. And so we think that this would be kind of a mixture of kind of more permanent logo signage, as well as signage that would be switched out with changing exhibitions. And then again, just a couple of examples of similar banners at other museums like the Brooklyn Museum, the Met, and also the Met Cloisters have a very similar system and means of attachment. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Kate. Actually, I had 2 quick questions as you were doing the presentation. One is, do you plan or did you consider screening the HVAC equipment so that whatever is seen is a sort of a intended designed element. And I noticed for the signage, you're referring to the Hispanic Museum and Library. And is there a sort of a conscious effort to rebrand the institution from the Hispanic Society of America to just the Hispanic Museum and Library?
So I'll
So-
answer the first question, and Margaret, do you want to take the second one? Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so yes, your question about whether we had considered screening elements at the roof or not, we did, and we spent a lot of time studying it, and ultimately, we had worked really hard to get the mechanical equipment very low, and when we did comparative studies, we found that screening the equipment actually made it more visible than if we let the mechanical equipment kind of be where it is. Let me hop back actually to, give me a second, and I'll show you in section what we did so that we made it so that, so if we look here at this section at the bottom, the mechanical equipment that's closest to the edge is the lowest equipment, right? And so and especially that view from the south, that equipment is as low, we've made all of it as low as we possibly can. We're removing like 1.5 feet of fill at the roof, but because of the kind of the isolation and the support that's required for this equipment, it really cannot be any lower. And so if we were to install a screen, it would actually make the bill, it would be more visible than the equipment itself, just because of how low the equipment is. And then Margaret, I'll let you discuss the kind of the name and the
Yes,
logo.
so thank you, Wayne, for that question, because it's a good one. We are and will always be the Hispanic Side of America, legally speaking, but because there's kind of a misunderstanding of what we are as a museum and a library, we wanted to make that clear. So we have, just for in kind of publicly on our website and our signage, we are the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. So it is a rebranding, similar to like what the Morgan Library has done, their Morgan Library and Museum. So we are the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. Really, the intent is society, I think for many people, sounds like a private club, which we are not. And we're really working really hard to be more engaged with the wider community and be known as a museum and library. And we're open, free to the public. We want to invite people in. And so, we are the Hispanic Society, but we are a museum and library. So that's sort of the intent behind that. And that happened several years ago. It's just that we don't have a sign. So
No one knows.
it's so no one's know. But if you go to our website, it's Hispanic Society Museum and Library.
Yes, thanks. Vivian, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was curious whether you've already started the work, because as in the picture I emailed you, Margaret, there's already sort of orange structure. There's stuff going on the roof that I can see at my window.
Yeah, so what part of this, and Kate can probably speak to it, part of the application process with landmarks is that they require you to do a mock-up of what it will look like, so that we could take these pictures for you and show you, what it's going to look like. So it's for you and for landmarks, and also to photograph and documents. Of course, I have to say, just before we installed this, right before a storm. So, we've been concerned with so some of the netting, I think we took it down because we didn't want it to hurt anyone, but it's been, I think, reinstalled. So it's not work. It is really a mock-up so that you could look at it and comment on what it will look like installed. I don't know, Kate, if you want to speak to that.
Yes, no, that's exactly what it is. You might also see that there's some netting around some of the elements of the cornice around the building. And that's related to kind of ongoing maintenance and repair work that my firm is working on. And we will be coordinating that with landmarks once work is being done. Right now, we're kind of in the investigation phase of that.
Yeah, and I can confirm that, not on behalf of the committee, but as a committee member, that that mock-up is required as part of the LPC procedure. And I know there were a couple of applications that came to us years ago in the Jamel Terrace Historic District for work and brown, and they had to do a mock-up of what they were planning to do on the roof so we could see that. The next hand I see is Steve Simon. And Steve was not with us when we began, so just to introduce him to everyone, Steve is also a committee member. Steve, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. I think the idea of rebranding the Hispanic Society as a museum and library is a very wise decision. I think there's definitely confusion about what the Hispanic Society is. And, some people would read into it that it's some elitist private group, and making it clear that it's a museum and library, I think is the right move. And I think having the banners and the sign is also a very good idea. It seems to me that what you're proposing has a really minimal effect or impact. And if we need to pass a resolution in support of it, I would go along with that.
I think from what I hear, this is kind of a heads up presentation that they're not yet going to LPC.
Okay. All right. So, Margaret, we need to get together about the 156th Street sidewalk.
Yes, I would love to. That definitely is something we need to discuss. Kate, can you speak to a little bit about landmarks in the process? Because we have been in conversation with them. I'm not sure what is needed from the community board in terms of a resolution, but do you?
Yes. So
we are meeting with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are here to get a resolution from you all, from the community board. We are planning on presenting to landmarks at a public hearing with essentially the same presentation on March 1st. So a little bit, yes, just under a month away.
Okay, so not that much in advance. That's good to know.
Well, but if we're going to do a resolution, then we need to do it tonight, don't we?
Yes, I know. That's good. That's why I said it's good to know.
Okay.
Jim? Berlin?
Hello. I just want to comment that everything about this presentation, the quality of the presentation itself and what you're presenting to us, all seems very well thought out. I think it's very wise, that these mock-ups are required because they do help the community see things better. But I think, given the circumstances, I'm very much in favor of what you're doing, especially, of course, making the museum actually accessible as it should be, because I love your museum. And I probably love your library too.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Vivian, is that a new hand or an old hand?
It's a new hand.
Okay.
I had just for the record, the Museum of the American Indian did not leave in 1960. It left in 1990, because it was said earlier that it was in 60 or in the 60s.
I actually think it was later than that, because when I started in 1993, they were still open, Vivian. So yes.
So it's even later than 1960.
That's okay. No, I think but I do have to say the Smithsonian had taken over the building, and it actually did have some kind of air conditioning system, but it was probably installed in like the 60s or 50s. It was very old. And that's what that one unit that you see on the roof accommodated. But yes, thank you, Vivian, for that.
Tanya, any thoughts on this?
No, thank you.
Okay, so since it was clarified that a resolution is requested, would someone like to move a resolution?
Yeah, I'll do that.
I second it.
Well, what do you move, Steve?
I move that we support the proposed project, including the modifications on the roof, as well as the banners and signage, and that we recommend that the Landmarks Preservation Commission approve the proposal as well.
That's what I was seconding.
Yes, so it's moved by Steve. It is seconded by Jim. Is there any further discussion? In that case, I will take a vote. I will first take votes from the committee members. I do not see any other board members present. So after I take votes of committee members, then members of the public who are present, you can also vote. Unlike in a general meeting where only board members vote, at committee meetings, members of the public can also vote. So first, for committee, those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any opposed or abstaining? And so now I'm going to take votes from members of the public who would like to vote. And then you do so, you can raise your hand in the system. So members of the public who would like to vote in favor? I see 4 hands. I see 5 hands. Okay. Any members of the public opposed? So the people who voted yes, take your hands down, please. So any opposed? Any abstaining? Thank you. So we will, write this up. We will present it at the general meeting, which is the 4th Tuesday of the month, and it's anticipated it, should pass, and then we'll forward it to LPC with a copy to the Hispanic Society. And of course, at the general meeting, anyone, including representatives of the Hispanic Society, can, sign up to speak during public session, and you can, sign up, you or Alex or both, to encourage all the board members to vote in favor. Good to see you again, Margaret.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support. You've always been a great advocate for our projects, and I really appreciate your support. And I encourage all of you to come to our next exhibit, which opens on February 16th or February 17th.
We'll be there. And I would also say that one of our former board members, the late Edith Prentice, was always, advocating for greater accessibility for Hispanic Society. And I think she would be, even these temporary improvements are, really big moves, because they allow you to really get deep into the terrace if you're in a wheelchair. So she would appreciate it.
Yes. No, I think about her all the time, and she was, a big part of it. We listened, and I know it was really an important aspect of our project that we've prioritized. So I hear you, and thank you for mentioning her, because I think we listen.
Yep, you are very welcome.
Has Natalie started working for you?
Natalie, I'm very excited. She has. For those of you who are not aware, Natalie Espino is our new Director of Education at the Hispanic Society, Education and Programs.
Yes, I believe she mentioned that at our general meeting a week ago or so.
Excellent. So.
And let her know you got a good reception here tonight.
I will.
And we behaved ourselves, because we don't always do that.
No, you always do. You always do.
All right.
So thank you. So flipping the agenda back, I see that we have our, speakers from Department of City Planning. We have Annie White and Olivia Olmos. And Annie is going to introduce us to Olivia, who is our new liaison for city planning. So Annie, the floor is yours.
Yes. Hi all. I believe Olivia might need to be made a presenter.
I've already allowed her to speak.
Okay. Okay.
She's just muted, but she can unmute herself.
Okay. She said she doesn't have a video function. I don't know if you want to, see her speaking in action. But
Well, I can't do anything about the video function, but she should be able to unmute herself and speak.
okay.
I am able to unmute. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So don't have much of an introduction, but just to say that we're really excited that we finally have a new planner liaison, Olivia. She's joining city planning. She's been in New York for a while, but was most recently working on the West Coast. I'll let her give a little bit of background. So she'll be, filling the shoes that Ryan previously filled. I'll remain the team leader for all Upper Manhattan community boards, and Olivia will be primarily managing projects in community districts 9 and 12. So Olivia, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks for the brief intro, Annie. Yes. Hi, all. I'm Olivia Olmos. I'm the newly hired assistant borough planner and planning liaison for CB12. Bit of background on myself. In my previous role at the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, I was involved in nonprofit development work, aided in the preservation of affordable housing, meeting the state's housing element goals to create affordability protections for the lowest income residents of the greater Los Angeles region. I'm really interested in smart neighborhood growth that also preserves neighborhood character. I really do look forward to getting to know you all and working closely with you all. And I hope that you come to know me as someone who's approachable and concerned with the top planning and zoning priorities in the area. And I'm looking forward to sitting in on this meeting. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, good to meet you. In our email exchange, you mentioned that you were, I guess, reviewing some of the materials on, I guess, our, planning and zoning priorities. What have you been able to review thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been reviewing some Inwood development and zoning history, just catching myself up on that, really familiarizing myself with how rents in Inwood are increasing faster than the rest of the city, how that's putting pressure on residents largely dependent on affordable housing, and also looking into how we can prioritize connecting areas of public open space like Inwood to the Harlem River and the waterfront, opening over a mile of public access and open space, so a large interest in public land use and park use. And also just familiarizing myself with public investment over the last decade and top priorities that you all are looking forward to right now.
I would point out that, you mentioned Inwood a couple of times, and CB12 is Washington Heights and Inwood. And on our website, there are links to the district-wide neighborhood planning and land use study that we completed circa 2007, 2008, which is the first and only time a planning study looked at the entire district from 155th Street until you fall off the tip of the island. And, that looked at a range of issues, in terms of housing, in terms of preservation, in terms of, open space and zoning. And so I would say that, many of the topics raised in that planning study, even though it's more than a decade old now, are still very relevant, but it will also give you, I think, a very decent sense of some of the things that we are still talking about now. In that planning study, the whole idea of, preserving neighborhood character and neighborhood scale and contextual zoning is really, highlighted quite a bit. And in some of our more recent resolutions, we've pointed out how, and as recently as last month in a resolution, how although the community board has articulated to city planning our interest in certain contextual rezoning, there really hasn't been much action. And it's not the mean villagers rolling up the medieval gates and pouring hot oil on the visiting travelers. The idea is, if you look at that planning study and if you look at the built form of the community, not much of it, the vast majority predates the 1961 zoning resolution, and some of it predates zoning altogether. There are real concerns that the as of right zoning in some areas would allow for new buildings that are out of scale and out of character. And, you can, and I think that planning study showed a couple of case studies where you can get new buildings that have the same density. And we often in conversations in the community board confuse density and height, which are, as you know, are not the same, but you can get the same density. So you're really not downzoning anything, but you're doing it in a built form that fits in better with the existing community. And we think that's, very reasonable approach. And as city planning is now looking at, exploring, what's good urban form, we think many of the ideas that are raised in that planning study speak to what's good urban form.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Wayne. Thanks for bringing up the wider planning study on the site. I'll be sure to take a very detailed look at that planning study and familiarize myself with regions far beyond Inwood, spanning across the community board.
Steve.
Yeah, have we sent her the resolution that we just passed at the last meeting about R8 zoning?
We have not sent her anything per se, but I guess the question is the information that was sent to city planning. Annie, do you know if it was shared with Olivia?
Yes, we actually just received that today, coming down from our press office that received the formal resolution. So we gave that, I'm familiar with some of the requests, but I'll give that a more detailed look. And I know it's focusing on the Washington Heights area. So that'll be good for Olivia to catch up on as well.
Right. When Ryan came on board, I remember sending him a number of resolutions that spoke to planning and zoning requests. And I don't know if his emails are accessible. I could see if I could find that rather than searching for each and every one of them, because I will probably get them to you faster than if you ask the office to, search for it and get it to you. But my point is there's a lot of history, a lot of, requests that pertain to, planning and zoning, as well as a lot of articulation of how we understand and define affordable housing. That would make for, good reading.
Yeah, absolutely. Wayne and all, please feel free to share with me any planning, zoning resolutions you'd like me to, put on my radar and bring my attention to. I'm definitely eager to review that and happy to share my email, Wayne. I believe you have it, but if anyone else would like to send materials my way, I'm happy to take a look at that.
Yeah, I will share your email with the committee.
Terrific.
Vivian, Jim, Tanya, anything for Olivia? Olivia, we're letting you off easy tonight. I don't understand this.
Well, next month you can bring a little more heat my way.
Okay, we're behaving.
I have a question that might be a little bit off the wall. Olivia, you come from California. Could you be related to the actor Ed Olmos?
That's a terrific question. Yes, I actually have a probably pleasantly, maybe not so surprising response for you, but I come from a family of journalists. A lot of my grandfather, my father were healthcare editors at the Los Angeles Times and eager to interview. So they did sit down with Eddie Olmos, and I think we are distantly related. My grandfather grew up in East LA, a large Mexican family, and if you look back at family photos throughout our history, we have a very similar look. All the men have a similar facial appearance. So I will confidently say we're related. That has not been 100% confirmed, but you heard it here first. I think we're distantly related.
Okay, we'll put that on Finding Your Roots and we'll get more detail.
All right. So it wasn't completely off the wall.
Definitely was not.
Okay.
Jim.
Thank you, Wayne. I just wanted to mention to you, since Wayne spoke of some of our various glorious activities in the past. One of the things we sent to your office was quite radical, and I think we need to mention it all the time. It turns out, if you look at Washington Heights and Inwood, what you see is, acres and acres, in fact, square miles of buildings, all 5 and 6 stories high, none of which cast shadows on one another. So this is as about prime territory for solar energy as ever there was. And so we passed a resolution consistent with something they might have done in California, saying that we would like zoning that essentially says the light that comes to your building now, one of these buildings is yours, and no one can build a building taller than you next to you because you're going to use it for solar, power, and this is your sunshine. So, and again, if you look at the built structure of New York City, these acres and square miles of, roofs that are all about the same height, we could generate probably more than Indian Point ever did, certainly on a sunny day. So I would urge you, and of course we can send you another copy. I think this is one of our most forward-looking resolutions, which is why I decided I would mention it.
Well, thank you for the mention, and please do send that my way.
Yeah, Steve, is that an old hand or a new hand?
No, I now have a serious point to make. I don't know, is the previous chair of city planning still in place, or has Dan Garodnick now started working?
We are actually in a chairless interim week. Anita's last day was last Friday, and Dan starts on Monday.
All right. Well, we understand that before she left office, she approved the fresh application for 4650 Broadway. And as you probably know, this community board went on record in opposition to that application. We didn't feel it was justifiable, and we certainly weren't interested in seeing more density added to that building, which, as you know, is right across the street from a scenic landmark for Tryon Park, as well as being way out of context with the rest of the community. And we also don't believe that there's a dearth of supermarkets providing fresh produce in that immediate area. So I don't know how you can convey the idea that we are extremely disappointed with the fact that that our views on the subject were ignored. But I think that was an unfortunate decision that was made.
Understood. I did brief Olivia on that, the history of that application. Just, I'm not going to say anything to, completely assuage your concerns. And I was in those meetings and I heard all of them. I will just say that due to the certification nature of a fresh cert, the chair is constrained by certain findings. It's kind of what we call a non-discretionary action. It's not completely discretionary like a rezoning would be. And as the chair did see that the private application for a fresh made certain findings, she did go forward with the chair cert during her time. But your resolution was shared, and it's just something we see throughout fresh certifications that are applied to as of right developments in our 7-2 areas.
Well, perhaps that's something that city planning should look at. I mean, recently with the modifications to fresh, and I know this was driven by the experience in Brooklyn, where there's now a test so that if within, I think, a mile of an application, you have X square feet of fresh supermarkets, that you can't have any more. So perhaps some similar test should be applied where if as Steve pointed out, if you have within some radius of the site an ample number of supermarkets, and the planning rationale for the application is really just to add density to the building, that would be potentially a reason to, not approve it. Because as we articulated, I think, and, went to great lengths to make people understand that under the existing zoning, the vast majority of the building density was permitted, and the additional density that was added by the, application, added, I don't remember at this juncture, 10 apartments or so, but whether it's 200 or 210, it's still a big building. And the idea that, the supermarket was serving a need really didn't hold water. The supermarket was allowing another 10 or so apartments to be built at the end of the day. And and that's an easy enough analysis for experienced, planners to do. Steve, is that an old hand?
No, that was the same hand.
Okay, you can take it down.
All right, I shall.
And anything else for Annie or Olivia? Well, I say before you go, the next item on the agenda does not pertain to you exactly. However, I would say, reflecting on some of the conversations we've had in the last few months, including the last general meeting, I thought it appropriate to look into sort of updating training needs on land use and zoning. And although the borough president's office has provided the land use 101 and the advanced land use in recent years, when Edwin Marshall was our city planning rep, he actually did that. He did the presentation. So I'm wondering, because I don't know, I've reached out to Tim in the borough president's office to find out when or if they're planning to host those training sessions in 2022. But is it possible for city planning to do like the land use 101 or the advanced, which basically covers the 101 with some additional stuff, do that for us in an upcoming committee meeting?
Yeah, sure. We can definitely ask about that. I know that we have tried to kind of consolidate community board training. And actually Edwin now in his new role is doing a lot of that work still, since he's so great at that. So Olivia and I can see what this schedule is. But I know that there were some requests for, more topic specific or advanced, and we could maybe partner with the Manhattan Borough President's Office to do so, but we'll at least find out when the kind of basic land use training is happening, as I know that's been a little bit on a hiatus with some of the other priorities we've all been dealing with.
Right, well, tell Edwin we miss him. And I would also say that as part of the land use 101, I think we also need to add a little more on the building department process, because one of the things that I took away from our general meeting last month, there's not a clear understanding necessarily between the distinction between zoning regulations and approvals and building code regulations and approvals, and what's as of right or under one or the other and what's guaranteed. So we talk often about the zoning, but I think it also would be important. I think in one of them towards the end, there's one or two slides that talk about the building department. We might say a little bit more about, building permits and that process with city, well, not with city plan, but with the building department, and, how it differs from, zoning, but how any given project has to satisfy both zoning and building code.
Yep, that's a great idea.
Is there any old business? Was that your hand, Steve?
No.
Okay, so seeing none for new business, I emailed you, and there are two things. One is a discussion by a couple of neighborhood residents on a proposed project. Before we get to that, I wanted to point out that I forwarded to the committee a couple days ago a draft resolution that I received from Congressman Espaillat's office. And this is something that he plans to introduce to Congress on the 9th, and it's for Black History Month, and it's honoring the Harlem Renaissance. And they reached out to me as a historian. I don't know where they got that. I'm an architect, not a historian, to see if there are any comments, but although I did provide some, but I asked if we could have, they wanted it by, I think, 2 o'clock today. I asked for a little more time to give the committee, opportunity to look into that and provide some comments. And I know Vivian also tracked in some. Do any committee members have additional edits or comments on that document?
I didn't get a chance to look at it.
So if you could look at it, I think Vivian's version is the most recent because she added her comments to my comments. If you can get it to me, tonight or tomorrow by noon, that would be great. Monica in the congressman's office is looking for me to get her something like by 4 o'clock or close of business, tomorrow, which I don't think should be difficult. I think we should also be, encouraged that, the Harlem Renaissance is being, recognized. I don't know, the centennial of the Harlem Renaissance may, in fact, those celebrations may still be continuing into 2022. And one of the edits that I made to the document was not only, recognizing it as, an important movement, but also celebrating the centennial.
All right, well, I hope he's checking with people in Harlem who might be.
I'm sure they did not just reach out to me.
All right. I wasn't going to phrase it that way, but yeah, okay.
So moving from that, I also circulated to the committee only a few hours ago email thread that I got via Liz Ritter, where a number of community residents actually live near you, Jim Berlin, expressed concern with a proposed project on Cabrini Boulevard. And I see Gabriella Barnstone is here, and you're unmuted. So you have your ability to speak. Actually, you're on twice for some reason, 3 times. I don't know why
those
that
are some other members of my building who are going to watch.
So they can go in there and change the name so we know who they actually are, because otherwise you're triplets.
Yes, I've never known there to be 3 of me. Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to thank you all for letting us comment short notice. And I also want to especially thank you all for all the work that you do for the community. So this is in regards to a vacant lot that is right next to ours. The address is 205, 207 Cabrini Boulevard. And I should just point out, I'm going to keep this brief because I know it's towards the end of your meeting, but I just want to point out that this is not any old vacant lot. There is a tremendously huge piece of Manhattan schist that is rising above the ground level, and I'm not, although I'm not an engineer, I think that it's definitely the crux of the issue. So our concern is, I just want to emphasize that our concern is not aesthetic, even though, we would love to have a community garden there. Our concern is primarily safety. So I'll just give you guys a little bit of history. Let me just tell you the current situation, which is that it's there's a current owner. It is privately owned now, and they're named Gold Chip Ventures. Their building plans are currently approved. They have not yet received permits. So we have a log of complaints roughly between 2005 and 2010 to the DOB. We can also forward these. There's like a few pages. We can forward these to you if you're interested. And that's regarding the cracks in the foundation of the adjacent walls and buildings. And these complaints resulted in fines and permit revocations. So you can see that in the log. This was excavation work that caused the cracking in adjacent foundations and retaining walls. And this was done by a previous owner who then sold the lot under bankruptcy to Goldshift in 2018. So the new owner has already been fined for unsafe excavation around the retaining wall without a permit. Once you look into this, you can sort of see it's a little bit like Groundhog Day, where whoever goes in there has these issues, and so we're trying to figure out how this new plan, which is, as far as we can tell, expected to go into effect, how it's going to be any different in terms of affecting the foundation, the retaining walls to the adjacent building. So then our question is, so we're just concerned citizens. We don't necessarily know where to look. We thought we would try you guys. So our question is, what, if anything, can the community board do to ensure the safety of our building? Can you advise us or direct us to contact the Department of Buildings? Are you guys able to review the safety plans? So that's really just what we're wondering.
Yeah.
And thank you.
In my response to Liz Ritter, which I believe she forwarded to you and one of your colleagues, I pointed out that, if the building it's privately owned, and it's going back to what I was saying with city plan, if they're building it as of right under, zoning, there isn't any discretionary action that the city or the community board, has jurisdiction over. But that said, and I also said this in my email, if work is being performed without a permit, if there's violations to a safety plan, please do not wait to have a conversation with the committee. Alert the district manager, Ebenezer Smith, so that he can file a complaint with the building department and have them follow up. You can also probably directly file a complaint with the building department. But I provided that response to the office, and I believe Paola Garcia looped it in with Ebenezer. He holds what's called a district service cabinet meeting on a monthly basis with various city agencies. So I believe it's on his agenda to speak with DOB about this site at his district service cabinet meeting this month. I believe you have Paola's email address. I would just circle back to her and confirm with her that
That's Paola Garcia.
Garcia, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Make sure that it's going to be on the agenda. And I would say it probably would not hurt for you. And I don't know if it's through 311 or through the building department's website directly, file a complaint so that it's on record, because even when someone, if there's unsafe work, if there are violations, then make sure that it's flagged. And I also suggested to loop in the borough president's office and the local councilman so that they know what's going on.
And how would I loop in the president and
the Manhattan? Go to the Manhattan Borough President's website. They have contact information there. Or when you reach out to Paola, ask her, who at the borough president's office, she recommends you reach out to. Our Natalie, who we mentioned, who now works for the Hispanic Society, used to be our contact, but she's not there anymore.
Okay, and I should just mention, and I'm sorry if I didn't make this clear, that so the current owner has already received, they paid the fine. They got a violation. We can actually send you guys this too, but they got a violation, they paid the fine. And so now they're waiting for permits, I guess, based on like a new safety plan.
Right, and that's the point. It's not just a matter of paying the fine. We want to make sure that the building department is aware that this was a problem in the past that recurred, and so they need to pay attention to what's going on at this site.
Okay. So, and what is Ebenezer Smith's title?
He's the district manager for Community Board 12. So the board members are all volunteers. Ebenezer gets paid.
Okay. So that's great. So that's who you would direct us to. And then is this meeting that you're talking about, is that something that we could attend? Or
I don't think it's open to the public.
it's not? Okay. So I would just send him all the information.
Yeah, make sure he has all of the information.
Wayne, I believe the district service cabinet meetings are theoretically open to the public.
I don't know. So when you speak to Paola, you can have her confirm that. I've attended district service cabinet meetings, but I'm a board member, and that was also umpteen years ago.
I'm not sure that the buildings department attends those meetings. They're not one of the agencies that has district level supervision. So,
As I mentioned, Paola specifically asked whether this is something that CB12 you there. As I said, when Paola emailed me, she asked specifically, did we want Ebenezer to address this in the district service cabinet meeting? And I said, yes.
Yeah, there's usually a representative there, and when they do not attend the meeting for some reason, they always ask Ebenezer to email them any concern, and I believe Ebenezer's already in contact with DOB regarding this matter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Well, okay. Thank
And
you
I
so
see
much.
Tom.
Yes, thank you. Just to back up and get a little bit more granular so that you guys all understand. The site itself is underlain by a deposit of Manhattan schist, which has been excavated by drilling down to the sidewalk level in part of that site. But it's entirely underlain by solid rock. And that solid rock continues under Hudson View Gardens next to it, and also the building north of it. So as they work on that, the vibrations are transferred immediately into the foundations of the buildings around it. And it makes for a truly unsafe situation, which we've seen the last time that they did the excavation on the site. So that's the problem that we're facing, first off.
Yeah, we've encountered a number of projects over the years, many of them in the context of BSA applications where the problem is rock. And, that is something that we encounter a lot up here in the Heights. Steve, is that an old hand or a new hand?
now I wanted to ask Gabriella, I'm looking back at the original email that was sent to Paola, and there's something here about present information seems to show that it is approximately 20 feet higher than the local restrictions. Is that still your belief?
I don't know if that's like, I'm just assuming that if the building plans have been approved, that that's no longer an issue. I don't know for sure though, because
if you scroll down through that email, Steve, apparently years ago, the site was subject to a number of deed restrictions, and they pertain to the building height, which I think couldn't be more than 79 feet, the materials, and where venting could occur.
Yeah, I saw that.
But those deed restrictions are no longer in place. So the only height restrictions would be height restrictions that are pursuant to zoning. And in R72, as you know, as long as you don't break the sky exposure plane, there are no height restrictions.
And can I ask a question?
And
Mr.
how do you-
Bender?
I'm sorry, how do you know that that these restrictions, that the agreement that they entered into with Castle Village is no longer in place?
This is the information that was shared with us, but if there were deed restrictions, they would be of record, and you can go to Department of Finance's website, because it would be recorded against the property.
Well, I don't know, Jim, are you familiar with these, this declaration and amendment of restrictions entered into with the Castle Village Owners Corporation?
It could be, since that's why I have my hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, my name is Jim Berlin. I'm a member of the Castle Village Board of Directors. I don't want to go through the whole long history, but as Wayne pointed out, there are restrictions written into the deed that Castle Village has control over. And these restrictions, because Castle Village has control over them, Castle Village can change them. And so originally, and then we'll make a big leap, the only thing that could be built there, according to these restrictions, was a 3-story, 1-family house. And Castle Village agreed to the new restrictions that, so the building cannot be more than 79 feet above the sidewalk on Cabrini Boulevard. Okay. And the other restrictions, that they're still in force. Now, the fact which Gabriella, I think, she made the correct inference. Despite what Castle Village says about, the height of the building, which we had a right to comment on, the building still cannot violate zoning, and it doesn't. And the fact that, as you mentioned, it was approved by the Department of Buildings means that it does fit within the zoning resolution. Now, as I understand it, and again, I'm the next door neighbor, but we all try to be neighborly. And I think we've gotten more and more neighborly as time has progressed. It is my understanding that the developers are reaching out to all of the neighboring buildings to talk about various issues. And that would mean that they either have or will soon reach out to probably the board of directors of Hudson View Gardens. And presumably, your board of directors is fully aware of exactly the same concerns that you have. And the other thing, is, and safety, of course, and people's lives are of paramount importance. And that's essentially why we have a Department of Buildings. And that's why, well, I won't excuse, they're generally very difficult to deal with. But part of this difficulty is they have to make extremely sure that there won't be building collapses, and that the vibrations, of whatever they might do, doesn't damage the buildings. Now, the other thing is, and again, this is just my personal understanding, but I think, they've basically given up on doing anything with the rock. They're not going to try to dig down any further. They're not going to try to get rid of any more of it, because that didn't help the previous owners at all. It certainly didn't help their finances. So I think they're going to build on top of the rock, and therefore their building will be very, firmly attached to the bedrock of Manhattan. But, again, and because, Castle Village does a co-op also, I would check with your, board, because again, it is my understanding, and this is just not, not like they told me any necessarily, but, anyone who builds a new building always reaches out to all of the neighbors, and so that, they're trying to reach out to, all of the neighbors, including you guys, and so I think hopefully I've clarified. So the building, like you said, meets the zoning requirements. They knew that, and I mean, if you have any further questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to answer them. But those are the facts as I understand them.
Only that if they have to to do any excavation for sewer and water and electricity and all of that stuff, that's going to have to go through bedrock as far down as it goes.
But it would be fairly limited. They would clearly not
Yeah, it would have to be.
do, large areas of the site just to bring in utilities.
Well, one reason they wouldn't want to do it is because it's, obviously prohibitively expensive. And you're absolutely correct. In fact, we had discussions of that sort with the previous owners who would have had to done the same thing. And basically what they do is this was the previous guy's plan. They would dig a narrow channel, from wherever the pipes would go in their property, out. And then now the other thing is, and I don't know how long you've been living in your building, but at one point, 10 years ago or something like that, they put in 2 new electrical transformer vaults in front of our 200 building, which is across the street from this lot. And these things had to be connected to the sewer system so that they can drain. If you think about it, they have to have drains so they fill up with water in the rain. The sewer system at that point is like, I don't know, 50, 60 feet below ground. It was just this major excavation. So I don't know what they're going to do there. But again, the key is the Department of Buildings. They control everything. Their main essence, among other things, is safety. And the other thing is in terms of any nuisance or we at Castle Village are probably not going to be particularly happy with unnecessary noise or whatever. So and again, traditionally, the way it once was a rivalry. When Castle Village was built,
rivalries, please.
Well, no, it's essentially over now because Castle Village blocks the view of Hudson View Gardens, which did not endear the project to them very much. Not perfectly, but now things have been much better. We've been cooperating. There was a whole bit of cooperation way back when, trying to get gas into the neighborhood, which finally Con Ed relented on or whatever. So, that's. And again, I that's about all I can say. But we Castle Village are not going to want crazy noise either way.
So I would say, thank you for that information. It's useful, Jim. And I would say to wrap, as we did get the information from Liz, I did, make a point of sharing it with the committee. As you heard from Paola, the office is already on this. It is being addressed, with the Department of Buildings. I would suggest that you stay in touch with the office, with Ebenezer and Paola, so that, as things progress, you're on top of that and, find out who would be the appropriate person in the borough president's office, as new borough president, who used to be a community board member. And so that they are familiar with this as well.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your help on all of this. We all, I'm not just speaking on my behalf, on behalf of my entire building and other members of my community. So thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Steve, I see your hands up again.
Yeah, Gabrielle, you should note that the borough president lives maybe 2 blocks away. He's at Cabrini and 187th Street.
He moved again?
Yes. So
Okay.
So he probably has he probably knows the site and would have an interest in it.
Okay.
But Jim, to clarify, the 79-foot limit, that is still in place?
That is to be confirmed.
No. That is absolutely in place. The building, the very highest thing in that building, including the top of its highest bulkhead, is below 79 feet. We reviewed those plans. And if necessary, we will have, someone survey to make sure it doesn't go any higher. Now, and the 79 feet is, totally from Castle Village. And it basically forces, basically context with the other buildings.
Yeah, not to belabor this because we need to wrap. Did Castle Village own that site with intention of doing something on it?
Not that I know of. And in fact, how exactly, the other thing, by the way, that this restrictive language in the deed does is it creates the Castle Village Lane, which actually exists on their property. It's an easement and it's permanent. And I believe it's going to remain open for the entire construction period because it's going to be covered over with a shed or something. And, but I have no idea how this language got into the deed. You know, that's one of the great mysteries.
Yeah.
It turns out to have been.
The interesting thing is that the retaining wall that's right next to us is actually owned by Castle Village. So the one that was cracked, which is why they have a.
Yeah. Vivian will research this and come back to us with a detailed report.
Right. I'm, you know, again, I don't know about the ownership of any walls around Hudson View Gardens, but again, I believe all those walls are yours, but that's not a subject for tonight. And you know, if you have any, and again, you know, we have always been very good neighbors. In fact, I just recalled many years ago, 10, 15, there was a terrible fire in one of your buildings. And that night we opened up our community room, and I think you may have opened up yours too, just to take care of the people, you know. And then I think we even found a temporary apartment that we could, you know, that some subletter was willing to sublet to, you know, folks in your community just to, you know, lend a hand. So I think, you know, we will all work on this together, and we will remain good neighbors.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank you.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
We are adjourned at 8:43 p.m. Good night, all.
Good night.